Do you have a great admiration for people who don't even exist? Do you know histories of fake worlds better than you know your own? Do you geek out? If so, geek out with us here now. It's the Geek for All show.
It is indeed the Geek for All. We are still alive. We exist. It's still a thing. It's still happening occasionally when we can get together. Hi, I'm Geekmeister, and I'm joined by Winchester.
Hi, guys.
We had one shot in November. Like, there was like 1 week that we could get this done, and I was in bed with a terrible sinus infection.
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding me? The holidays are going to be kicking my ass. There's no way.
So, it just couldn't happen in November, and then late December now is as soon as we could get together to do this. Really.
Yes.
So, but we are here now. We're getting one last episode out. We are going to be talking about Star Wars, but we've missed so many other crazy fucking things that have happened.
Yeah.
That I want to at least address a few things that have taken place before we get into Star Wars, but that will be the main focus. We'll probably go a little longer tonight just because we've missed so many things. So of course the big thing, and we normally don't get into like a big political thing here a lot unless it like happens to relate. And the Harvey Weinstein stuff,
yeah.
I think it's kind of like I don't think you cannot talk about it.
No, you really can't not without talking about like pretty much any industry, especially the entertainment industry like we do. That it's just kind of like now it's especially a thing where like we knew it happened sometimes, but the fact that it's all of a sudden within the past 8 months, well, not even like it all started kind of snowballing, and now guess what, guys, sucks to suck. I think I actually have a personal anecdote about it that it happened the other day. We were sitting at my aunt's house talking at Christmas, and one of my aunts and a lot of my uncles, a lot of my family, my brother are in the theater business. So working opera houses, Broadway, all kinds of stuff like that. And my aunt worked for a lot of big companies doing productions and running pretty much she ran everywhere. She did everything. She produced a lot of stuff. She did a lot of stuff. And we were talking about it, and and my uncle goes, you must be, he looks at her and he goes, you must be, just sitting there smiling. She's like, yeah, I fucking love it. I love watching these dirtbags just falling. And she kind of said it very quietly. And it was pretty interesting to watch her kind of, and then she gave an anecdote about how it would happen pretty often where a bunch of producers or a bunch of heads of networks, like NBC and CBS, would get together in this penthouse, and they would invite her. And they'd be like, oh yeah, if your partner's coming, just, let her wait downstairs. Let them wait downstairs and just come up, for drinks. We're just going to hang out. We're going to talk, blah, blah, blah. We're going to talk about a couple things. And they would try and play it off very professionally, but like she knew, because let's face it.
I mean, like, no, nothing about that is
right.
Yeah.
Not sketchy at all. And if you have any sort of intuition whatsoever, that that's a bad situation. And so she would, she couldn't just outright turn them down and that's kind of the power play, was she couldn't outright turn them down. So she'd go up there, she'd open the door, she wouldn't hear anybody. So she would yell into the room, oh, actually, guys, I gotta go, blah, 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 see ya, bye, click. And she would close the door and leave, like immediately leave. She wouldn't even go in the room.
Right.
And it's anecdotes like that, and it's just hearing just kind of this, this big movie mogul, and like people joked about it for decades.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it was not a big surprise.
No.
Exactly for people who had been paying attention for a long time, because people hinted at it and talked about it, and for a long time, kind of in their own subtle way, tried to express that this was a thing that was happening. Really, the only way you could get away with it safely was kind of doing satire, where it was just like, it's just a joke, haha. I mean, like, what do you have to worry about? It's not real, right? And that was sort of the only way that people for a long time could get away with it. And now, I am glad things are being taken more seriously.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And then people are being held accountable. Even though it's, it may have been something that happened decades ago, but you still did it. So, the fact, everyone's like, oh, well, if they didn't say something then, blah, blah, blah. To be totally honest, if I'd been a 16-year-old girl stuck in some psycho's office, and it was between that, speaking out, and being blacklisted from the industry that I wanted to be in, that's kind of, I would be scared enough to be quiet about it too.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a reason that we haven't heard about it up until now, because the fact of the matter is that it wasn't taken seriously, and if it wasn't being taken seriously, you were basically going to just be accused of slander, essentially. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think there's been some efforts to do that, because now a huge, crazy number of allegations have come out, and for most of them, I'm inclined to believe that it probably was but then there's a few of them you hear about, it's just like, I wonder if somebody is now doing that, and more importantly, the fact that I even have a doubt about it is now problematic. And,
absolutely.
It is.
Well, and it's very problematic in terms of, like, if it's suddenly someone like, and possibly admire. Like, somebody accused George Takei. And, you've got these people. There was actually, I saw it on Twitter the other day. It was literally, like, yesterday. Somebody had accused... Okay, so if you're at all familiar with the Supernatural fandom, you know that Jared and Misha and Jensen are very much... I'm not going to say handsy, but they're handsy with each other. Like, they're very inappropriate to each other.
Right. Well, they know each other, so
right. And they know the boundaries. They know, and they would never touch anybody that didn't have consent about it. And if you look at any of so they do a convention circuit around the country every year, and that's run by a singular company, and they do photo ops. Well, they're pretty much like mannequins. Like, the guys stand there, and the fans will ask them to do something. Sometimes the guys will say no, but like 99.9% of the time, they're like, hey, fuck yeah, I'll do it. Okay. And I guess this woman who was, apparently she's the PR person for Travis Aaron Wade, who was in season 10, I met the guy. I thought he was the coolest guy ever. Super cool, super chill. Apparently he's had a problem with Misha and his PR person, whether he says it or not, but I guess he's had problems with them lately. And she started a fake Twitter account, accused Misha Collins of doing I don't remember, it was definitely inappropriate something. And then, outed herself that she was actually the PR person for this guy. But then on her Twitter the other day, I think it was Sunday, she had posted pictures of, it was like a collage of posed pictures from the photo shoots that the fans were paying for. And it was slightly inappropriate things, like Misha was straddling one girl and miming touching them or doing whatever. And the entire fandom went, you realize that these are consensual, right? Like, they asked to do it. And the girl, if anything, it should be the guys that are super, uncomfortable with it. Like, Misha should be the one that's uncomfortable with it.
Right, because, and they do this literally because they know that a lot of times they are going to have some unruly fans who are going to just harass them anyway.
Exactly.
So they kind of just make the situation like this, like, hey, what fun, sort of naughty thing would you like to do?
Exactly.
Then it's sort of out of the way, and, it's less likely that someone's going to try to push their luck if they're already being given that. Whereas, they might just kind of be like, oh, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'm just going to go for it and grab his ass.
Exactly. If they make it more open, then somebody doesn't have to... They're like, oh, can I mime grabbing your ass? Yeah, sure, whatever. As opposed to, somebody who actually does that, which they've had, celebrities have had that in the past. That was the whole thing about Taylor Swift. That was her whole big... her big trial this year, that she was countersuing this guy for $1 out of principle because he sued her for slander. But there's a picture of him, they were standing in front of a bunch of photographers on the red carpet or something, and he literally has his hand up her skirt. You can see it. Her skirt is lifted in the back, and he's got his hand on her ass. And like, so something like that. Obviously, the boys are very, they're very obvious, but the fandom is very different for Supernatural outside of the show. And this woman has very blatantly tried to just, I think, take advantage of the political culture right now and try and see, and it's slander is such a bad word for it, but try and blame him for something that he very obviously did not intend to do.
I think slander is still technically correct. You're also, she's trying to deface somebody's reputation.
Yes.
And and so it's unfortunate that people are going to take a serious issue and try to use it for their own gain. But I mean, that's kind of human nature. That's what happens when somebody sees an opportunity. They take an opportunity.
Which is shitty, because then the person that it actually happens to, for somebody else, is going to get taken less seriously.
Yeah, and I think the thing to remember is that so much of it's been like undoubtedly been proven true. Like there's like just so much evidence that like with Weinstein, for instance,
exactly.
And with Kevin Spacey admitting to it.
That was bad.
That was hilarious.
That one was bad.
Oh my god, that was. I mean, no, it was horrible. Don't get me wrong, but it was so horrible that it turned into comedy gold for like the next 4 weeks. Are you kidding me? Oh my god. Oh, I raped him, but it's okay because I'm gay. What?
No. No.
What?
You're just like, oh, Kevin, just shut up.
What are you even talking about right now? But it does stem from a thing where rape is not taken seriously in general enough, like to begin with, and especially rape where a male is the victim in any sense is just 100% not taken. Like
it's constantly a running joke. Prison, don't drop the bar of soap in prison kind of joke where, people take advantage of it and think it's funny. And it's really, it's on it. Like you said, it's one of those things where if the victim is male, it's less likely to get any sort of traction in any sort of legal sense or even just in, social sense, which is something to say because even legitimate claims from women don't get taken seriously as it is, and like I think it's like 1% of all claims will get persecuted at trial and taken and sent to prison. Like it's a very minuscule percentage.
And then you have to counter the fact that it's a flawed system. So for every like 3 of those that were totally legit, a false claim actually slipped through and went through all the way. Yeah, no. So it's really unfortunate that
somebody tries to take advantage of it.
Yeah, but I think the thing is that you, until you have evidence, this is one of those weird cases where until you have evidence to the contrary, I think you kind of have to go with the victim.
Right, like everyone, like I constantly see arguments about it on the internet of like, oh, what happened to, innocent until proven guilty? He's not on trial. I don't give a shit. I think, to me, I personally side with the victim, and that's me personally, is I side with the victim because I wasn't there. I can't say that didn't happen.
Yeah, and I think the truth of the matter is, even when you have like that situation of there's 2 sides to every story and whatnot, that means that at the very least you have a gray area,
right? And
so that means something happened, like whether or not at least in most of these cases where maybe it wasn't exactly what is being said forward, but maybe the person was also traumatized and is remembering things to be a little bit more extreme than what actually took place, especially if, they were just not being taken seriously.
Yeah.
And it's a really rough thing, but it's just, I think the fact of the matter is just like, it needs to be taken seriously enough, and the person has to be at least believed enough where it's looked into and properly looked into and addressed in a real way. And hopefully we're going to start to see that. Hopefully the few false allegations that are floating are what I kind of really ultimately are just sort of am hoping are false allegations, because I don't know, maybe there are some maybe George Takei actually does have some skeletons in his closet.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. I like to think not, but it's like, well.
Oh shit.
found out about Charlie Chaplin earlier this year as other things were coming out.
Right.
And it's like, oh, like, yeah, all those cute kids from his films. Fucking most of them.
Yeah.
Straight fucking most of them.
Yeah. So it's a very... it's almost... Yeah, I don't know. Saying enjoying watching these people go down, it kind of paying for it. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I got a little bit of enjoyment about watching the fact that Kevin Spacey got kicked off House of Cards.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's the comeuppance, and not even necessarily legally, but because you never see it happen in real life. Outside of Hollywood, you never see it happen. That fucking Brock Turner kid is asking for a retrial because they don't want it on his fucking record.
Well, I mean, okay, he's in that particular case, he's asking for an appeal, which is the normal court system, and it's like, if you want to turn away the appeal system, that's a whole other issue. But
but at the same time, he got minimal.
Oh no! If you want to complain about his court sentencing the first time around, I'm completely right with you there. But no, he was, and the fact that he in the newspapers was reported as an athlete and not a rapist was just fucking disgusting. Absolutely. But I think that there's been a lot of hubbub made around the fact that he's asking for an appeal, and it's like that's in fairness, this is what you do. You do just sort of ask for an appeal when you're convicted of something of that level. I mean, unless
which is fair, but like the original. So yes, you're very right. But needless to say, the original trial was a fucking circus.
Oh Jesus Christ! It was a goddamn catastrophe.
So if we got a fucking vigilante this shit, and people get consequences outside of the judicial system, like losing a major spot on a very successful TV show.
Right, no, and this is the thing that I said for, like, just because something isn't illegal doesn't mean it can't get you fired or shouldn't get you fired.
Exactly.
I don't think you should go to jail for saying racial slurs. Getting fired for saying racial slurs, on the other hand, I think is completely justifiable.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
And I think that, on both sides, and, not to make it, because, we say we try not to be super political, because it happens all the time with a lot, it tends to happen more on the conservative side, like with that Duck Dynasty thing a couple years ago.
Right.
But earlier this year, there was a woman riding I don't know if you saw this in the news. She was riding her bicycle down the street, and Trump's motorcade drove past, and there's a picture of her, and it was a picture of her in like the local newspaper or like the national newspaper or something, of her flicking off the motorcade. And she was wearing like her company t-shirt or some sort of like identifying logo, and she got fired for it. And as much as I lean with her and go girl, I understand the consequences.
I kind of get that one too. Now, I wish the company as a whole had enough cojones where the CEO kind of had the mandate of like, no, we're actually as a company taking a stance against it. Like that would be cool. But that's the decision for the CEOs and their board of directors and all of those people to ultimately be making about that. And yeah, you represented the company with your own political ideas, and that's. It's a fireable offense if it's offensive enough, and I disagree with the manager, but it's totally within justified.
I'm gonna say it's justified. Although then she got picked up by some other company when they saw the picture, so they're like,
right. So all's well that ends well, and good for that company for having a moral conscience. I hope people kind of like go toward that company,
right?
Whatever. I didn't see the story.
I don't know
obviously.
I don't know what field she works in, but it was something. It wasn't like Amazon or something, but it was another, like, I think a PR firm or somebody that picked her up. And so the same kind of thing where it's it's gonna ruin your reputation. You shouldn't have done it in the first place. Keep your hands to your fucking self. Because really, that's kind of what it boils down to, right? Like, golden rule. Just keep your hands to your fucking self.
Yeah.
The unnecessary.
Although to sort of hastily transition, speaking of a company that cannot keep its hands to itself, Disney bought fucking Fox.
Yeah, this is a company. This is a company that can't keep its hands to itself. This is exactly it. This is we talked about it earlier. I welcome the mouse overlord. It's fine.
I don't know.
It's fine.
It's
Live,
too
breathe,
I don't know.
Disney. It's fine.
I don't know.
It's fine. Don't
Flashes
worry about
to the
it.
old one, Mickey in South Park, just kind of like.
No, I'm just thinking of like what is it, Demolition Man and the Fast Food Wars of like 2049.
Oh my God.
Where Taco Bell is now like a 5-star restaurant. That's what I'm thinking of too.
Yeah.
So yes, they did buy Fox, which means that I haven't read the details on like X-Men and like, it makes me happy because I want a lot of those universes to come together, and especially because X-Men especially is very much at that like tipping point of like, we left behind the old cast. Like Jean and Scott are still around because they redid all that bullshit. Kind of, sort of. Not sort of. Like,
for the most part, it seems
but
like
Logan's still the same guy, so like it's fucking weird. So regardless, like they've kind of restarted this whole universe. So they're on that tipping point of like, well, if someone's gonna take it over, might as well be now. Because let's be fair, the last couple of movies have sucked.
Logan notwithstanding.
No, yeah. Well, yeah, Logan notwithstanding. Logan was phenomenal. But like the X-Men movies in of themselves.
Yes.
Not that they were ever really gold, but they were enjoyable.
Right. And there have been some that were far more enjoyable than others. And yeah, no, the last few ones have been totally weak. So.
But I guess if it's gonna be a tipping point and someone's gonna take it on, might as well be Disney. Might as well be now.
I mean,
I guess.
Maybe. Yeah. No, just like I don't know. Like it's weird thinking that a singular company owns at least 80% of my childhood. Like,
yeah,
it's
true.
Super weird.
It's true. And I think it was Jewel State had tweeted, like right when it came out, she's like, oh great, a new influx of people asking me, she said, it's a new influx of people asking me if Firefly is coming back because Fox owns Firefly and now Disney owns Firefly. But she's like, I'm just excited to be a Disney fucking princess. Which I think is phenomenal.
Yep.
But it's a lot. I mean, if somebody's gonna take it, if somebody's gonna take something and run with it, Disney hasn't had that bad of a track record. Like it's hit some lows. Hit some lows.
No, but I mean,
but it's hit some highs.
It's an entertainment company that certainly knows what it's doing. I will grant you that. 100% a company that knows what it is doing as far as how to keep people on a large scale enjoying what they're putting out. But it also means that you're gonna get some things that are a little bit different, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
There's always going to be a bit of a Disney twinge to it now, you know what I mean? It's
certain people. So, like, I was talking to some people, and they were saying they were concerned about Deadpool.
Right.
But they actually, Disney actually released a statement that Deadpool will stay rated R.
Okay, which is good. Which is good.
Would that be the first rated R Disney movie?
Well, it depends on whether or not Disney actually produces that movie directly.
That's
they
true.
have so many options as
That's
far.
True.
And that's the thing. They as a company have other studios
right.
that develop like their R-rated, PG-13 rated
right.
films. Ultimately,
it's just Disney happens to own it and just like back end like shell company.
Exactly.
Disney owns everything anyway, so.
So it's entirely possible to be fine, but you have noticed Disney's touch on things as it has bought stuff.
Yeah.
You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? Like there is still kind of that sort of Disney feel. There's a certain sense of humor, and it's actually attributed a lot with Marvel, but when you think about it, it's a very Disney sort of sense of humor in general.
It is. Well, yeah, you could tell when Disney took over Marvel and like the MCU, and like there was a definite shift there. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what changes, what doesn't, what gets better, what might get worse. Some people are worried that if Disney owns everything, they're not going to produce quality content because they don't have to.
I mean, that's a total worry.
It's an absolute worry. I don't necessarily think that, but I also kind of have that optimistic hope that anybody that works for a company like an entertainment company is going to want to put out the best thing that they can. That's optimistic. I'm sure it'll get crushed because it has in the past. And obviously, MCU, certain things have been, the MCU is like a huge, there's been movies that are 10 out of 10, there's been movies that are garbage. Like, it's a very wide range, but you're going to get that when you release 20 movies in a series anyway.
That is fair. You are bound to just kind of wind up with some duds when you have that many movies coming out, especially that many movies coming out in such a short period of time.
Right. We're thinking, once or twice a year they release an MCU movie.
Pretty much, yeah. Like,
I think at one point
I think they're up to 2 times a year, basically.
At least. I think there was one year, I think we had like 3. I think something snuck by us that was like, oh yeah, we're just going to throw that one out there. It's just going to go.
Was that this year? Hang on,
I think that was this year. So we had Ragnarok.
We had
Homecoming.
Well, was there something in early January?
Maybe. Oh, Guardians.
Ah, Jesus Christ, there were 3 this year.
There were 3 this year.
Wow.
Because they had to get them all out before fucking Infinity War.
Yeah.
And we have Black Panther, and then the next month is Infinity War.
Yep.
So, like, it's...
Yeah, no, they are just jamming everything that they can, because they're trying to make a mint, which,
right.
that's what you do as a company.
So, I want to be optimistic. I want to be pessimistic because at the same time, like, I don't want a monopoly. I don't want, whatever. Well, like, I'm sure DC shit its pants when they saw that merger and went, oh, fuck.
Well, this is the thing. Okay, so if Disney buys, like, Warner Brothers, then they've got, like, a shoe-in to, like, buy DC out as a whole as well.
Which we might benefit from that.
Well, that could be very interesting because then DC and Marvel characters could exist in the same universe.
This is true. And then I would definitely just worship our Disney overlords and just be like, just give us good stuff. It's fine. It's fine. Just be good.
Make us pretty things that we might ignore our own plight.
Exactly. Exactly. But so we've got, and I think I have to wonder if certain things, will get picked up. Like, they're still putting stuff. We had talked about this a little earlier off air, about Netflix and Disney's, they have already released press releases about their own streaming service and how they're going to put, certain movies on there, but they still have movies and TV shows on Netflix and Hulu.
I'm actually wondering, I was thinking about this actually since we talked about this, like, I don't know, 10 minutes ago now.
Something like that.
I wonder if they're actually just announcing a streaming service. They don't have any interest in continuing to do it. They're just like, they're going to do it and, like, have it set up so that it'll run, like, 2 or 3 years, all with the idea of trying to get Netflix super nervous about how much they rely on them.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if they're going to try to buy out Netflix at, like, a super low price, essentially.
But at the same time, there's not a whole lot of, like, big... Maybe it's just because that's not what I watch. But I don't think that necessarily taking the Disney stuff off of Netflix is going to affect Netflix business.
See,
except for, I guess, if they own the... Does Disney own the Marvel Studios for that?
Yeah.
Like Daredevil and shit?
Yeah.
Okay, then, yeah, that might do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think Netflix would still ultimately, like, own that sort of, like, so there'd still be some kind of distribution right for, like, DVDs and stuff like that.
But they can't.
But it literally, like, those shows might start becoming, like, a straight-to-DVD show situation.
That's true.
In that case. I don't know exactly how it would
Yeah, because Netflix started doing DVDs, and I was like, why? For their original stuff, like Gilmore Girls got put up on DVD.
Well, because there's a lot of people who don't have Netflix who want to watch individual shows.
That's true.
So Netflix.
So now you
can
watch.
And also,
now you can watch
Netflix
Stranger
is
Things
broke
without needing to.
Fuck, they are trying to make every penny they can get.
This is true. Which is sad. Just put out more merch, and it'd be fine. If you put out season 8 or Sense 8 merch, people would buy it.
The merch might help, but they don't get it as a direct cut of that.
That's true.
Like there's so many manufacturing costs that go into all of that. So it's a moneymaker, but it's not at the same time.
Yeah.
But what they probably ought to continue to do is focus on stand-up comedy and documentaries.
Yeah.
Because those are super low budget things that they can do.
Right.
And just crank out.
Right, just crank out a bunch of them.
Which I think that's what they're going with, like, right now. I think it's probably gonna hopefully wind up working for them, but I don't know if Disney actually does have its own streaming service. Like, and everything winds up going there, then yeah, no, they could actually be in a lot of trouble. Yeah, no, a lot of like their Marvel shows are going to be lost. Like, there's a ton of Disney movies that are on there that, you know, people. I mean, think about like the kids section of that. Like, how many of those movies are Disney? Like, you know, sure, there's plenty of other ones. But...
Yeah, anything substantial to watch is Disney. Of course, that's just my nostalgia kicking up too. Is I don't want to watch some shitty kid show, but I'll fucking watch a Disney show if I want to. Like,
yeah,
if they put like Weekenders up on Netflix, you wouldn't see me for like a weekend because I would just fucking watch that all weekend.
I am going to curl up into this blanket
and watch shows I watched when I was 12. Leave me alone. So yeah, Disney overlords. I welcome the mouse, and I will have a shrine put up. It'll be fine. Some people's houses are already Disney shrines. It's not going to be that big of a change. It's fine. It's fine.
Well, there you go. Winchester is ready for the great mouse.
It's like the robot overlords. You just gotta be Alexa. I'm nice to her, and it's fine. When the robots take over, I will be hopefully not a slave.
Oh, has Alexa been down here listening to us the whole time?
Yeah.
Hi, Alexa.
Hi, Disney. Yes, I have an Echo Dot where we record, and she's listening to our every word.
And she is listening. She responded to that. I mean, she didn't say anything, but she definitely responded. That was creepy.
She gives Star Wars trivia now. We should do that later.
Oh, that'd be fun. Okay, so speaking of Star Wars and actually Disney as well, because Star Wars and everything, and actually on a certain note, that whole I'll get back to Disney's sense of humor working its way into this film and everything.
Yes.
This movie, I don't know if it could have any more controversy circling it without actually being a serious topic worth being controversial.
Let's warn everybody, super spoilers. It's been out 2 weeks. 2 weeks?
Yeah, no, we're talking about this thing entirely.
I don't give a shit. We're not waiting a month. I don't care.
Yeah.
So if you haven't been spoiled, stop.
Yeah, stop at this point.
Stop at this point.
I don't know how you haven't gotten spoiled at this point.
I managed to last like 4 days. And then I was like, no, we gotta go, because otherwise I can't be on the internet. So yeah, stop listening, go see it, and then come back and you can,
finish this up or whatever, and a million other reviews that exist online right now.
And then you can participate in the internet at this point.
No, like, I don't even know, like, what are you even online if you don't? Okay, so we're just gonna assume that you've seen it, because
major spoilers,
I don't know how.
Because otherwise we can't talk about this movie.
Right. Okay. So tons of controversy about this.
Tons.
Like, again, like, I don't know, unless it was actually about like a serious topic, a serious real world topic. I don't know how you could fit more controversy into this film.
Right. But is it controversy, or is it just people bitching?
It's like, people bitching, but there's also been some key people bitching.
This is true.
Okay.
Like Luke himself.
Which
he retracted then like 3 days later.
I'll get to that whole thing in a minute.
We'll get to that,
because there's so many different weird... Anyway. So
let's do overall, what would you give it out of a 10?
Well, okay, that's what I was gonna say. Overall, I actually don't know if I can just rate this like all together. The way I see it, okay, there's 3 different angles to look at this movie from. There is it just as a movie, self-contained, in and of itself.
Right. Not compared to like any lore or any, mythos, anything like that.
Right.
Any history whatsoever, just as a movie.
Just as a film. There is as a Star Wars film in a Star Wars trilogy.
Yes. In its own trilogy. And then as a contributing piece of work to the Star Wars mythos. Yes.
And those 3 things I have very different answers for.
There's very different scores for each of them. I agree.
Yeah. So just the quick overview on it. Mythos is an A+.
Yeah.
The as a Star Wars film and a trilogy, solid B, but
solid sequel.
But almost a B minus. like that minus is almost there.
Yeah.
It's almost a B minus, but I'm gonna give it a B. It's gonna scoot by on that just solid, simple B.
Yeah.
I have to give it as just a film by itself. kind of a C-.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
This thing was a fucking mess.
It kind of was a mess.
It was an unholy mess in a lot of ways. And something that I knew was like there and bugging me the whole time that I couldn't put my finger on was really highlighted, and it's a problem in all three of these lights. But it was the most problematic, I think, for a singular film, weirdly enough. And it's going to sound contradictory, but so when the director was being interviewed, he talked about his decisions for all of the moments. Mm-hmm. And basically what it boiled down to was, well, I thought that would be more dramatically interesting at that point in time.
Yes.
Which is not actually a great way to write anything, quite frankly. I know that there's a lot of people who love that, and I'm sure that they watch American Beauty 8 times a year. But and film plastic bags and shit. I liked that movie when I first saw it as well, and then I realized I was being a pretentious shit. Anyway.
What?
So that the problem, I think, is that it wasn't very clear what this movie was as far as self-contained. It was doing a lot of things as far as being a contributor to the Star Wars mythos, and it was doing a lot of things as contributing to a Star Wars trilogy as the middle film in that trilogy. And it did both of those things, like I said, those were pretty solid and on point. But as a film itself, and I know a lot of people are gonna bring up well, Empire. Okay, follow me here, because Empire, yes, was also a mess too.
It kind of was,
but I don't think as nearly as a mess as this film was.
I think, and I completely agree. I think in terms of, because you don't want to say there were too many characters and too many stories.
I do, actually.
But I think there was, and I think you could be like, oh, well, because then if you compare it to Empire juggled all those different timelines, plot lines, characters much better.
It did, and also
if you're going to compare the two.
If you're going to compare the two, but okay, there's also still only really 2 plot lines going on at once in Empire.
Right. That's very true.
There's sometimes what seems like almost 4 kind of things happening at the same time in this film. There's Kylo.
Right.
And so I guess Empire from there's Vader's perspective, but Vader's perspective is very short-lived.
Yes.
And it's more having to do with the Han Leia story as far as kind of just seeing the antagonist side of it.
Right.
Whereas in this, Kylo was very, very featured, very central to the film. He was not a side character antagonist of some kind, or just the main antagonist who wasn't showing up all that often. Very involved. He
almost became a protagonist at one point.
Right.
He jumped that line, which we'll talk about in a little bit too. He jumped that line to because he was in Force Awakens, purely antagonist, purely bad guy. We get it. There's a little bit of oh, he's gray, and oh my god, he's gonna,
But for the most part, he was
he was the bad guy.
Allegory to Vader.
To Vader, exactly. But in this one, at one point, everyone's like, oh, he's gonna come, he's gonna join us. It's gonna be great. And he jumps to protagonist. So then he becomes a main plot line.
And then the Knights of Ren / guards of the throne room. We don't know. They all die, and then he kind of goes back.
Yeah, they confirmed that it was the Knights of Ren.
Oh, those are the Knights of Ren?
Yes.
Okay. That was
the other part of this movie, was a lot of the shit that wasn't clear had to be confirmed outside of it.
And again,
people
are gonna go back to Empire and be like, well, they didn't explain the Emperor but they didn't have to. Well, they also didn't start explaining it.
Right.
And that's where this movie fell in a big way. It would start explaining things and then
stop.
And then kind of and the Emperor was also somebody who the pacing of seeing him was so much different, because we never saw him in the first one. He was only talked about. Then we see him as a silhouette. then we finally see him as an active member. So we've been building up to him as such a mystery at that point that we don't give a shit where he came from. We're just excited to finally see him on screen.
Exactly.
Well, Snoke, we saw him several times as a giant silhouette, not in just one particular scene, several times in the first one. And now we see him full-fledged and come through, like, the whole thing. Now we're more curious about where he came from, because he was so short-lived in his mystery.
Well, and now we want to know, like, even right before the end of that scene, like, he's a very obviously powerful Force user. So now we've gained interest in his character. Like, not even just as a bad guy. Like, now we want to know what he's all about.
Right. I think the other thing that makes me want to know that is because it's whereas Vader's fall or Anakin's fall and stuff, it's so explained away and very short and all of that.
Right.
Like, you know, Obi-Wan says the thing and fucking whatever. And,
Right.
This one, we have fucking flashbacks to the moment of, like, Luke versus Kylo, which is understandable considering how much it affected Luke and where his character went and everything.
Right.
Same time, because of the fact that we know that he had, like, he literally went out of his, he actually could have simplified this in a lot of ways by just not mentioning Snoke during all that, but they did. They hinted at Snoke again and made us want to know more about him.
Yeah.
So that really is, like, you can't just say, like, well, they didn't do it in Empire. Well, they didn't even show the Emperor in Empire, except for one scene.
Yeah.
One scene, and he remains this mysterious, ominous being. You don't see him die in the second film and then get no explanation as to why he was important.
Right.
Like, it's so obvious why he's important by the time you get to Jedi because of the creep of it all. Like the Emperor has just dissolved the Senate, is what we hear about him first and foremost in one film. Then we get to actually see him. Yes, he should become a powerful ally. Oh, he's like Vader and has force powers and shit.
He's like really a bad guy.
So yeah, no, they didn't tell us anything, but they made us feel like they were telling, like we were getting told stuff.
It was showing, not telling.
Yes.
Like, we had to make assumptions, but at the same time, it was assumptions that you could make with the way that they presented the information to you. It wasn't just like drawn out on a giant chalkboard, like, oh hey, this thing is important, you need to connect those dots. And this one, it was a lot of spoon feeding certain things, but then dropping the spoon and being like, sucks to suck, that's
yeah,
sorry, you're gonna have to wait. And part of me wants to know if maybe because, like, not necessarily because of the reactions that this movie's been getting, but maybe it happened and then the third one will kind of bring it back and wrap it up and be like, yeah, we dropped the ball on this one, but it's because we're touching on it here, kind of thing. And I'm wondering if that's what it is, and everyone's freaking out because we don't know, because we don't know. But at the same time, you have to present these, you have to know that that's going to happen. You have to know that you're going to get that kind of feedback from a movie that, because we're not going to have another one until 2019 for this storyline. So you're going to have to deal with that kind of, and you have to present the information in a way that you don't get that lash. That backlash.
Right. They didn't necessarily do a great job on that. So again, as a self-contained film, and then also when we were talking about like that Disney humor earlier, it didn't do this film any services really because it was so drastically different. When Abrams is doing stuff, you can make those kind of jokes. His whole tone is a little bit more tongue-in-cheek from the beginning.
Well,
so
one of Poe's first lines. How's this work?
How
you
does
talk? I talk.
You talk. I talk.
How's this work?
That was totally fine.
It's hilarious. I don't need the slapstick. I don't need the slapstick in my Star Wars. Like, sometimes it's funny, but like once.
But yeah, like you keep it a little bit limited and like all that, and like there were some fun lines. Like I'm glad that Luke said, okay, I'll grant you that's pretty much from nowhere.
Yes.
Like that was funny, but there was a lot of other. Most of Hamill's stuff, I guess, was actually all right because he played it off very well.
He did.
But it could have been very heavy-handed if he hadn't actually just done a really, really phenomenal job.
Right.
And so okay, and actually this is as good a time as I need to transition to the Hamill.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So, because the other bit about this is what Hamill thought. So he had first like made it very publicly aware that he didn't really like it.
Yeah.
And then the studio said something to him because he made the comment, well, I kind of got in trouble for that, and I didn't really mean to, like, say that, but still kind of giving you the hint he still wasn't satisfied. And then at some point after the film coming out, he kind of made some comments about, like, well, actually, now that I've seen it, I think I was wrong, and all of this or that. And it's... I don't know what to think about it, to be perfectly honest, because it's so very possible that the only reason he's saying that, like, oh, no, now I totally see the picture is because the studio's just been like, we are going to ruin your life if you keep saying shit right now.
Yeah.
And as we were talking about those scandals from earlier, studios have the power to do shit like that. So, I don't know. I think his first impressions of when he was on the set doing the character are probably his more genuine impressions of the film and of that character, which is interesting because I totally disagree.
I absolutely disagree, which kills me inside that I absolutely disagree. So if you haven't read it, Mark Hamill basically said that he had disagreed with Ryan, the director Ryan.
See, I can't remember
something, whatever. Yeah. He had disagreed with the director in the first, like, when they had first started filming that, but he said, he even said it, he was like, I disagree with you, but I'm going to say that and I'm done. I'm going to do my job, which I admire Mark for.
And he did an amazing job doing, if he did not like the direction, you couldn't tell it by his performance.
No, because there have been some actors that that they phoned it in, they hated that shit. Like, they hate doing that shit and they don't want to do it and they're just going to make everyone's lives miserable. Mark did not. However, he came out publicly and was like, basically, hashtag not my Luke.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it was one of the hashtags on his tweet, where he didn't believe that Luke would banish himself to an island for 15 plus years. He was like, oh, well, it'd be like maybe a year, and then he'd come back and he'd start kicking ass again. And I'm like, but would he? Jedi don't have a great track record of not hiding.
Well, and also, like, I think he remembers the old films a little
where
more
he is a
fondly.
Badass. Where Luke goes to train and then comes back and is this fucking badass Jedi.
Well, okay, actually though, but let's talk about Luke's character in those original films, because yes, badass certainly, whiny brat.
Absolutely.
Definitely also yes.
Yes.
So I think Mark kind of maybe forgot about that part of it because Luke is so recognized as this iconic hero and everything.
Right.
Then I think we kind of forget that he was also kind of a punk.
Oh yeah, super, absolutely.
And I don't mean that in the music genre. Kind of. I mean like a punk ass bitch.
Yes.
Like. Definitely Luke was kind of a punk ass bitch, and like the fact I enjoyed that seeing like great old Master Luke is still kind of a punk ass bitch. Like there's something kind of hilarious about that. Like yes, he has gotten wiser and stronger in the Force, and yes, he has life experience. He is clearly a wiser person than he was even in Jedi. You can tell that even by the whole thing. But that he still kind of has this attitude of, like, once he's made up his mind about something, it's what's going to happen. Like, people forget that, like, things like the fact that, like, his training with Yoda was a fucking disaster.
Oh, yeah.
Like, everyone's just like, it took him years and stuff. First of all, he spent almost no time with Yoda. He trained himself for the most part. People are complaining about, like, how did Rey learn to do these things? I don't know. How'd Luke learn to do it? Well, he studied with Yoda. For like a week.
A hot second.
For like a week.
Before fucking off. Like, that's how, And the fact, I think Luke gets very idealized and idolized. But at the same time, like you said, he's kind of a punk ass bitch, and he's kind of bland. Like, to me, in terms of like personality, obviously Leia top of the list. Like in terms of character growth and development and personality, Leia's gonna be at the top of my list. And then Han's, like, out of the trio, Han is my second. Where I'm also like Han Solo trash. So let's be fair. He's got that moment where he's like, fuck everyone else. And then he kind of gets a little bit of a redemption arc where he's like, all right, maybe I'm not such an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I'll come back. Whereas Luke doesn't really get a whole lot of growth. Like, we see him We see him grow in terms of, and struggle with the Force in terms of dark and light, but we never see anything other than that.
Yeah, no, we don't see a lot of real world growth.
Right.
We do between Empire and Jedi.
Yes.
But it's just kind of, it's a sudden transition between those two.
Yes.
And there's still a lot of that old Luke in him when he's in Jedi.
Yes, a little punk.
Yeah, because he's still so determined that he's going to be able to just kind of do it. And
Right.
that's the thing, he's always so determined, and he's usually not ever quite right.
Right.
Like, things usually never wind up going the way that he thinks that they're going to do.
No.
Like, his hubris, gets in the way right from the very beginning in Jedi. Like, when he's on that shuttle, and he feels Vader, and he goes, why did I come aboard? This was a bad idea.
Yeah.
And he knows it, right then and there. That
But
it was
then he still does it.
And he doesn't find, a way to, dip off from them, immediately. No. He still, basically, stays there long enough where Vader can force hear, all them plans, basically.
Right, exactly.
And, it's ugh.
So, yes, he is very much that crotchety old punk-ass bitch on that island with all of those puffins. And...
I do have to say, actually, knowing that the whole puffin situation existed, and
Makes
that's
me like
where
Porgs
the
way
Porgs
better.
came. Yeah, no, it's much. I'm much more okay with them.
That-
oh, you had to fucking deal with some real nature
that
and,
wanted to be your friend.
Yeah.
So, we'll get back to Mark Hamill. But the Porgs, when I saw the movie, I was so hesitant to get any Porg merchandise, because I did the same thing with BB-8. I kept saying to myself, I will not get Jar Jar. So help me God. Fool me once, Star Wars. And then I got BB-8, and my house is filled with BB-8 shit. And then same thing with Porgs, where I was like, I'm still not gonna get Jar Jar. You can't do it. And I kept thinking, well, BB-8 kind of ran his course. He's cute, but cute can only get you so far. And I'm like, so they needed something else marketing wise. And then we learned that I guess the Irish island that they filmed on for Luke it's a habitat. It's a endangered habitat for puffins. Or puffins just are there, and they couldn't move them. And puffins, because they weren't they had never had social interaction with humans, were like, "What's up, guys? Let's hang out, and I'm just gonna be all over you all the time." So they were like, "Well, let's CGI over this shit because we can't get rid of them." So they got turned into porks.
So I'm actually down with that's a
I'm totally down with that.
Yeah, that's a great creative
cool.
solution to a problem.
Absolutely,
that's super cool. I'm down with that.
They didn't add anything to the story. They didn't do anything except be cute.
And they for me, as far as that one tier where I do have the as a single film, I don't think they ruined it as a single film. But I think Luke, wrapping up on Luke really quick so we can return to the thing, the actual problem. Because I don't think Luke was a problem. I think it's interesting that Mark Hamill thought that Luke was a problem. I think it's definitely a factor, and to those people who are just saying that they kind of wanted Luke a certain way and then they didn't get that, it's not a completely unfair argument. If it's the entire reason that you dislike the film, I think you're kind of being a little ridiculous.
Right.
And to just say that it was terrible writing or something. No. You may disagree with the character choices, but as far as just kind of narrative symmetry taking place inside of that film and everything, and him kind of becoming the reluctant teacher like Yoda was.
Super tracks.
And then getting one final lesson from Yoda before he fades the way Obi-Wan did, except in a much more badass way.
Yeah.
And now there are people theorizing maybe Obi-Wan never actually fucking left.
Yeah, he was just he
was just on Tatooine the entire time doing the same exact shit, and that's why he was never worried about any of the stuff.
Right. Yeah. Which I guess we would have to rewatch the originals.
I mean, it would make some of those tractor beam scenes seem interesting, because then you could think he probably would have just made his projection go there and then physically turn the knobs from that point.
Right. Absolutely.
But it's an interpretation and it's interesting.
It's a good theory.
But I think that they wrapped up Luke's story really nicely, and I think that considering that they weren't able to make Carrie Fisher's the next movie about Princess Leia and give it to Carrie Fisher, kind of because that was the whole concept. It was going to be a Han movie and then a Luke movie and then a Leia movie. They can't do that now.
No, because they've specifically said they're not going to CGI her.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah, no kidding. And so his last moments with Leia were also very nice, and I thought that was really good, and I thought it was even decent for the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think Luke in general for the movie, I think that was one of the big strong points for the film as a film, and I think it was great for the mythos. I think it was great for the trilogy. So I have to just kind of respectfully disagree with Mr. Hamill. And I'm so glad, though. I credit where credit's due to Mr. Hamill for doing just a phenomenal job with a part that you disagreed with.
Ponying up and just doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And being awesome at it. Like, showing us that Luke does have a personality. Showing us, and like, people bitch, they're like, oh, well, he never, because Mark's thing was like, he never would have he never would have exiled himself. Not the pattern in Jedi.
Yeah, no, Jedi seem to exclude themselves, like, constantly. Yeah,
like, that's just... And, like, you can argue about Obi-Wan that he was protecting Luke and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. But Yoda sure as shit wasn't.
No, Yoda fucked off. Yoda straight fucked off.
But if you think about it...
And then didn't want to train Luke.
Right. Exactly. It's scene for scene. Scene for scene.
Yeah.
Empire. But
no, that's the thing. There's for people that like this was too original. Actually, there's a shitload of Empire and Jedi going on throughout this whole film. They took both of those movies and smushed them together so that the next one is like you can't just rip anything off of the original trilogy. You have to come up with something decent.
Exactly.
I'm so sorry, J.J. Abrams, that he left you no concepts of what to do.
No.
Because again, he just every moment was just, well, that would be what's dramatically interesting. But where's that going?
But it's a lot of like, so if you watch, so the original, not so much with the prequels are very connected, but that's because there's an overall, you're watching Anakin. Like, that's the overall. But with Star Wars, like, New Hope could stand by itself. You could watch that movie and be done. Like, that's it. Whereas then you've got Empire and Jedi that are, Empire ends in this cliffhanger, so kind of ish.
Yeah, Empire is like, you can't really argue that film stands by itself very well.
Right.
It stands by itself where it's like, okay, but it's fairly dependent on the other two films.
Exactly.
But I mean, that's how a trilogy is kind of supposed to
And that's supposed to how it works. But this trilogy is almost doing the opposite, where Force Awakens ends in a cliffhanger. Like, literally, it's Rey and Luke standing on a cliff. Like, that's just kind of how it ends. And then Last Jedi kind of wraps it all up, almost. There's not a whole lot of, like, okay, like, there's a now what? But at the same time, the final one can almost... It'll still answer certain things, but it can... I'm wondering if it'll be able to... I have a feeling J.J. Abrams... I have belief in him, I have faith in him that he'll kind of... It won't ever stand by itself because it's part of the trilogy, obviously. But in terms of, like, its own kind of entity and being an quote-unquote original.
Right, no, I mean, his hand's been forced on that. Like, that's
yeah, he kind of has
about,
to.
Like, yeah, no, it has to be original because he took all of the scenes out of Empire and Jedi that you could possibly use to make plot points out of.
Exactly.
And which is a good way to to transition back into so again, for the trilogy purposes, not bad to actually do all of that and kind of make a new original one for the ending and everything. Right. Also contributed to making it a fucking mess of a movie.
Very much. We had heists, we had battles, we had it was a very mishmashy kind of.
And it was on top of that, it was sort of edited poorly, I think. I think they could have spent just longer periods of time on the stories they were doing and then shifted back because there was a lot.
It almost felt like
back and forth.
It almost felt like they were trying to be okay. So here's the thing: if they hadn't done the heist with Finn and Rose.
Yeah, Rose.
Finn and Rose, and then Benicio del Toro's character. If there hadn't been that whole thing, Finn wouldn't have been in the movie. There would have been nothing for him to do. I would
have been okay if he had gotten paid like six figures to just lie in the hospital bed. Or wake up when Phasma was like attacking or something like that and then just do that scene. Like, that would have been fine. I don't know why they overthought that part of it.
It did. That's exactly what it is. It felt overthought.
And like, And especially because, and I love Rose. She was a fun character.
Yes.
She did not need to be there. That character
No.
didn't need to exist.
No.
I'm hoping, and again, so this is where it's like, for the trilogy purposes, if she does some really great stuff in the next film, it's going to be awesome.
Yes.
For just universal mythos and stuff, she's a great character, and I love that she exists.
Yes.
For the film, it didn't do it any favor. She was a goddamn character that didn't need to be there.
That's very true.
Whatsoever.
That's very true.
Their entire side mission and adventure didn't need to happen whatsoever. There could have just been a hacker on board the ship the entire time.
Yeah.
Who agree that that's the course of action that they should try to take.
Right.
That's literally all you had to do. And you could have there's a ton of this film that like seemed overthought, and then parts of it that were clearly underthought.
I think Rose would have been a really good character for Rogue One.
Yep.
Because she's very much that like everyman kind of character. She's not the chosen one. She's not the the smarmy pilot. She's not the stormtrooper. She's just kind of like the everyman. I'm just a resistance person. I'm just trying to do my job to make sure that we survive, kind of thing. And I love her, but you're right. Like she didn't have. I don't think they gave her enough of a purpose. I think as a character, she's very well rounded. In terms of like consequence and watching, because like when Finn tries to take off,
oh yeah, no, her
like,
introduction scene was awesome.
It's great. And they have such good. I really like their chemistry together.
Oh yeah,
like them working together. I really like them together. But there was no conflict with her. There wasn't really anything. She didn't contribute a whole lot, and I think that's where they failed her. Not necessarily that she failed the movie, but that the movie failed her as a character. They didn't utilize her
that's
at all.
completely fair to say. That's completely fair to say, I think.
Whereas Benicio del Toro's character, fuck that guy. I'm not a big Benicio del Toro fan, to be totally honest.
I thought he did a great job with that character, though, and I think the character was interesting. Okay, so again, this is where, their whole side mission didn't need to be there, like it for the trilogy, like it for the Star Wars mythos.
Right.
Particularly with Del Toro there, because what a lot of people don't understand is, like, why was there a whole, like, Disney movie side plot, like, shoved into this? It was a fucking Disney movie. It was a whole Disney movie onto itself.
Disney PG
just
heist.
Put into completely and utterly, from start to finish, was its own little Disney film.
Yes.
The reason it was there, though, was to be able to be juxtaposed to his character's existence.
Right. When
they hooked up with him and started actually doing things.
Right.
Because they went like, yeah, we feel good about the things we do. Really? Because he also sold to you guys.
Yeah.
And
I think
now watch me be really creepy and slimy and swirly and everything as I help you attempt to do this Star Wars mission, which is totally going to fail.
Right. And I think that scene was the only reason for his character, not the betrayal, which did affect everybody, obviously. But not the betrayal, not anything like that. It was oh, wait, you guys think you're the good guys?
Yeah.
Because the audience got that message in Rogue One. We already kind of knew that the rebel, like, we've grown up, the rebellion. And, there's always like, oh no, I'm all about the Empire. I'm all about, like, we're all about the rebellion. We're all about the that group of people. And then you watch Rogue One and you're like, oh my God, we're a bunch of fucking terrorists. Like, holy shit. And it was very much there. And then, but they had to kind of reestablish that in this rebellion. In this resistance.
Yeah.
That, no, you're not all good guys. Like, that's just kind of, you're not all good guys.
You are what you are.
But I think it established that grayness. Because we get the dark side, we get the light side with the Jedi. We always have that. And that's a big thing with Rey and Kylo, is the light side versus dark side. There is no gray, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, and then Benicio del Toro's character establishes that with people outside of the Force. Which I think is very important. That there isn't us versus them, but sometimes you're the them.
Yeah.
A lot of times you're the them.
Yeah, no, and so that's the thing. His character, and so that's the thing. His betrayal and that whole Disney side plot, those things were all there to illustrate that point.
Right.
could it have been done a lot faster and a lot cleaner?
I think
so. Probably. There's a lot of different ways you could have gone about doing that. Maybe he was a spy who was on the ship the whole time, but he actually was willing to sell out the rebels like at a moment's notice because he had been only working with them because they were the ones currently paying.
I do think, though, that out of the big heist thing, being able to listen, and this is where I think Rose came into play, too, was when they're on that planet in the casino and they're talking about, you know, oh, this place is great, it's paradise, blah, blah, blah. And Rose goes, no, this is what the Empire does. Like, this is why these people are thriving. And it's very much like you see a bit more world building. Again, the mythos and universe. It applies to the mythos.
Yeah, it's great. It's another planet that we haven't seen before. And we get to watch the rich benefit from the misery of others.
Right. So I think it's just disappointing that it was a lot of stuff and a lot of wasted potential.
Yeah. For me, I think the quintessential scene for explaining my three-prong approach to looking at this movie is the Carrie Fisher, or Mary Poppins walk through space.
Yes.
Okay, so as far as the trilogy could wind up becoming something very, very powerful if there's some explanation that Rey and her worked together in her final years to make Rey more powerful. As far as universe building and mythos and everything, yay! We got to see Leia use some fucking force powers. Fuck yeah!
If you just go by what's in canon in Disney, fuck her. Like, she gets nothing.
No. She gets
a little bit.
She's probably one of the best censors. Like, by the time you hit End of Jedi, she's like noticing things that Luke wouldn't even be able to notice.
Which is true, but they never expand on it.
No, this is true.
So, and a lot of fans probably wouldn't have necessarily picked that up either. They would just say, oh, well, Leia just did that thing. But in a lot of the expanded universe, she becomes someone she's never like as strong of a force user as others, but it's very established that she becomes
right. And it was nice that they kept that over from Legacy. Is the fact that yes, she's a force sensitive. She uses the force. She's capable of using the force. And
but as a movie in of itself, it was awful.
Oh, that was
awful.
Oh.
Okay, a little piece of me is gonna die inside. I almost rather would have let her die.
Just die there? Just die there with a little bit of dignity, floating in space? Yeah, I kind of totally agree.
Leia would go out in a blaze of glory. Let's be fair. That would... And if Carrie Fisher was still around, she would agree, I think, that Leia would go out in a blaze of glory. There's no way that she would just go out as anything less. I think that would have been the perfect way to do it. Where it's Kylo, and he reaches for the button, and he freezes. And he stops. Because that was a huge character thing, too. That was huge.
That was an amazing moment.
That was an amazing moment. And then he sees the consequences of his actions of not acting.
And that's the thing. It cheapens that moment when she winds up just kind of like, and I'm alive! And I float eloquently. Which, and again, like, it's not... I have no problem mythos-wise. It's just like...
Because it's legit.
Because it's totally legit. We've seen the Force bubble used before.
Yes.
And like we've seen it not only in the Clone Wars television show. You go to Legacy, there's a ton of Sith Lords. Like, we got him out in the vacuum of space.
Nah, fuckers.
Hi.
Guess what?
I'm still here. I want to just float back. And like, well, how did she pull herself? She literally kind of just nudged herself toward the ship, and then there's no friction in space.
That's
like
just
that was a really fucking easy. Like, so I have no problem with the power set. It was a fucking awful moment, though.
Like, just the fact, and like the sudden, because I can guarantee you, anybody that saw that scene went, like as soon as the ship exploded, like the bridge exploded, everyone went, because we know that she's not supposed to die. Like that, what the fuck? But I think in terms of like that blaze of glory, that fuck you guys kind of, we're gonna do this thing.
Which is what this movie seemed to be about in a lot of ways anyway.
Right.
Like that.
I think I would have almost rather, and I understand why they didn't, because she still had things to do, story-wise.
You could have easily written off a lot of those.
I understand her reconnecting with Luke. That had to happen before she died.
I suppose that's true, but that could have been done through like a Force kind of thing. I would have preferred it actually.
Like almost, while she's floating,
having some kind of moment with Luke from across the stars or something like that.
Yes.
That would have been a much re-edit that scene that you shot with him in there and like make it so that it's like him in his own mind or whatever. There's a million ways you can re-edit that. I think a little bit of CGIing her into certain things to make that happen would have even been appropriate, just to actually give it a really clean final cut for her.
Well, and
instead we're gonna probably just open the next film with a kind of weird memorial to her.
Yeah.
And actually that's the only movie you have now. Right. Because if you don't do that, I'm going to be very upset. And I think a lot of other people are too.
Absolutely.
Because it's sort of a classless move to not do it that way. To not
acknowledge it in some way, shape, or form. But I think, it's just, I almost would have rather, and she's like my favorite. So like I want her to live, and I wanted her to live, and I wanted her to succeed, and all this stuff. But man, like her death would have had consequence. It would have shown that there's consequences to Poe's actions. There's and like Poe and we could talk about that too. Like Poe ceases the consequences to his actions. We get that, but it's not as personal as if his mentor had suffered because of it. If he had lost his mentor and somebody he cares deeply for, her death would have meant a consequence. If they wouldn't have just killed her off to kill her off, like a lot of female characters especially just get killed off to be like, to turn the main character as like a vengeance.
Just like the sacrificial
kind of thing.
lamb.
Yeah, sacrificial lamb kind of thing. I don't think it would have happened that. I don't think her death would have been that.
No.
But it would have shown that, hey, guess what, guys? We're back in war. Like, this is not just a rebellion against this rising force. It's war again. And there's nobody that can escape the consequences of it. It's just the way it is. And I think that would have been very poetic. And I think it would have been very fitting. The moment was ridiculous.
It's just...
Which kind of kills me. As a moment in a movie that I'm just watching, instead of ignoring like mythos and canon and all that jazz, it was very ridiculous.
It was. It for me, it pulled me out a bit. It was
absolutely.
Because I thought she would. Because I like when she was floating there in space, I thought there was just gonna be like this last little send off and everything, and then she kind of moved her finger. I'm like, you have got to be shitting me.
And I think it could have been, even if you did keep it, it could have been done better. Little less cartoony and hokey. Little less Mary Poppins, really.
Yes.
Like, that's ultimately what it was. Like,
it was a Mary Poppins move. It was, here's the thing, though. I don't want it to be removed, as far as a movie, I don't want it to be removed from canon. Because overall, the story is good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there was a lot of, for better or for worse, the fact that dramatic moments were being focused on created some really fucking amazing dramatic moments.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I disagree with that kind of direction style, especially for a sci-fi of this nature, where it's just like, even if you don't tell the audience the whole meta on everything, it's kind of important to have it in your own mind so that you're doing things consistently. And just him not doing that does bother me, and it's going to make it a hell of a hard time for JJ to get to it. But it's also given JJ Abrams a lot of interesting new tools to look at
to start doing whatever he wants.
Right, like he's not going to be able to use the old movies to base his plot structure on, and he's got a new force power, a very powerful force power to play with, and one that we've sort of seen examples of to a certain degree or another, but not like that. Right. And what was lovely about it is that the Force felt like magic again, and I feel like the Force hasn't felt like magic in a long time. And the Force felt like magic in that. Like, there was some stunning moments as far as the Force goes in this. The fucking LSD trip that she takes in that cave. Was
which is another scene
awesome,
pulled basically, from
clearly
Empire.
That dude has fucking partied.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yes. It was so cool though, because it was very much Luke in the forest, but to like a much stronger degree.
And she succeeds where he failed.
Where he failed.
Like, and people are like, well, how is she so powerful? I don't know. She managed to do that,
better
though.
at it.
Yeah, she's just, I don't know, because she grew up, like, by herself and has seen the worst parts of humanity her whole life. Maybe the darkness doesn't faze her.
Exactly. Like, and she obviously, it calls to her, but she's light, baby. Like, that's just how it's gonna be. And sorry, Kylo Ren, you're still a punk bitch. So, man, I was just like, come on, don't do it.
I'm not gonna lie though. I hate this instinct inside of myself. I do desperately want to ship those two because they are adorable.
They're so good to get. Like, they're very much that power couple together.
Oh God,
very much that power ship.
I saw like a little cartoon of the two of them. It's just it's been going, I love you, and she responds, I know, and it's like, and you can see them saying it, and it's but I don't know whether or not that would be appropriate, although it would be interesting if ultimately they both are struggling with their own side of the Force still. Like, I almost hope it's 8 years later and they both are still struggling, especially when it comes to the connection that the two of them have. I hope that it's like 8 years later, every 2 days, they still just kind of both see each other and just like trying to ignore each other and stuff, and kind of can't do it. There's so many cool things that can be done now. I hate that there was no bigger mythos thought of while they were being come up with, but he did come up with some unique and interesting things that now can be explored and explored how to fit them into the greater mythos and into the greater meta. And I don't think it's anything that's going to be too challenging to do. But I like that. Like, I wish he had better moments and thoughts about his meta overall. But the fact that he wanted the Force to feel like magic again, and that he managed to achieve that, is awesome.
Yes, we're starting to come back into the Prime. Like, we had the prequels where everyone, Jedi were the Prime, and we get this thing. But even then, like, we didn't. It was the prequels. If you didn't enjoy anything from those movies, and then the original trilogies. It's this, bullshit religion that nobody believes in, and which never really tracked in my mind because it's only like the Jedi had only been killed like 30 years ago. Well,
this is another thing where the prequels kind of are a little bit weak sauce in their own right. They made it. They kind of gave you this display that Jedi were around doing things all the time, and what they really failed to do was have people freak the fuck out every time that they showed up places. They should have. That's what should have been happening. They should have been going, "Holy fuck, Jedi are here! That's crazy."
Exactly.
Like that should, because then it would have made that make way more sense.
Right. But now we're kind of getting back into the fact that it is like magic, and it is this very powerful force is obviously not the wrong word, but it's this very powerful universal thing that can connect two people and is a feeling, and it's this intuition, and it's this connection to the universe that is so much stronger in these two than it has ever been in anybody else. Like, and it's not used as a tool. They don't use it as a tool.
Well, Ren
don't. Kind of does. Well, a little bit. Well, Kylo does.
Snoke uses it against them as a tool.
Right, absolutely. But Rey
and Luke uses it as a tool
at
the end. Well,
but Rey doesn't.
No, because she probably doesn't know how to yet.
This is true.
Okay, here's what I love. A lot of people have been complaining about, like, that power kind of came out of nowhere, and then that power. If there's one thing to be said about this movie as a self-contained thing, is that the exploration of that one power is actually extremely well done in this film, because you have a actually very nice organic progression of how you see this power displayed.
Yes.
It simply starts with the two of them seeing each other.
Yeah.
They see each other again, and there's communication that actually happens.
Yep.
And then at the very end of that, you see water droplets on his hand. There's some kind of tactile, physical thing going on a little bit, and then they talk and have that moment where they touch. The tactile thing has been strengthened now. That concept that was brought up in that second scene, in this third scene, is now strengthened and solidified. Luke comes in. Now you've established that other people can see it. You have this assumption that it's Force users specifically, but always remember the Force goes through everything.
Right.
So you now have it established that it can physically do things. Other people can see it. and that it can be projected from long distances. Like, you have literally all of the working mechanics in place for Luke to do that crazy ass shit at the end of it. It's so good. They build it up and build it up and build it up. Okay, we have all the pieces, and now watch what you can do when you're a fucking pro at this shit.
Right. Watch and learn, Luke Skywalker.
And watching the fact that Luke never really learned to become like a particularly great swordsman, but just an excellent Force user.
Yeah.
Like, because like when he's fake fighting with Ren, it's just like a lot of people have said, well, that's just because that's what the Force projection does. Like, I don't think so. I'll bet that that's how Luke fought. I'll bet that is exactly. Like, he never learned to unstiffen his body.
No.
But he learned to just let the Force sort of move his body for him.
Right.
And it was again like a Yoda connection. As much as I dislike Yoda actually being a person who uses a lightsaber in the prequels, because I think it would have been more interesting to always have him be the guy who was against weaponry and stuff.
Right.
But anyway, despite the whole other thing, that's the way he fought. Like, he just had the Force use his body like as an instrument, and then boom, 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 boom all around. And that's kind of what we saw here with Luke. It was a sort of more isolated version of it because he's a bigger being and stuff, so it'd be a little silly to watch him bounce like that.
Yeah.
But we still watch him ragdoll basically, and kind of like just sort of like easily like move around as if it was like almost like a drunken kung fu kind of thing, but completely physically impossible to be done without support in other places and the Force to be holding him up and, you know, making those effects happen.
Yeah.
So I think that I like to think that is exactly how Luke fought, and that is exactly what his fighting style eventually turned into, and that. I also think that's crucial because Ren would have recognized if something was weird about the fighting style.
Oh yeah, because
so he had to sell it
together.
Yeah. So I think that is spot on what Luke would have looked, and that's a beautiful way of doing it. He doesn't actually come back and swing his laser sword, but we get to watch what it might have looked like if he had actually done it.
Exactly.
While he demonstrates this new power. This is the thing. The mythos is so fucking strong in this film. It's ridiculous. It's just that there's a lot of problems with it as a film itself, and a lot of it has to do with the side characters in it, them wanting to give them kind of too much time on screen. This story needed to be, I think, much more about Rey and Luke, and I think it needed to be about Rey, Luke, and Kylo. And I think you could have shortened the high-speed chase, and also, can I take a moment to address people who are talking about the, quote, low-speed chase? Because every time I fucking read it, I want to murder somebody.
But it made
It's
sense.
not a low-speed chase. They said it several times. They're going as fast as possible. It just looks low speed because they're in space.
Yes.
There's nothing for you. Go watch a film with a car chase where they're going down a singular stretch of road. Mm-hmm. Take that frame, then go onto like a computer and digitally edit out everything but the fucking car. Oh, guess what? Does it look like two cars just fucking sitting still on screen, kind of wiggling back and forth a little bit? Yes, of course it fucking does. That's what it looks like. It's a high-speed chase. It wasn't worth them going into hyperdrive because it was a waste of fuel.
Yeah, which they established multiple times.
And they established multiple times, and because they could actually track them through hyperspace. They have a big advantage through going through hyperspace a lot of the times, and in the original movies, you remember, every time they did it, they couldn't really track them. They put a tracker on the Millennium Falcon, and that's how they followed them to Cloud City. After they got out of hyperspace, they had to drop out of hyperspace and then go, okay, that's what's going on. And Boba Fett actually followed directly and kind of got a sense of like, actually, I think they're probably headed here if I had to take a bet because he's a good bounty hunter. Again, these are things that they didn't really explain, but you can read between the lines if you're paying enough attention in that movie.
Exactly. Something also phenomenal about this movie in general as a movie itself, I have never had a movie take my breath away as much as when the main ship hit hyperdrive and just sliced through that whole fleet. Oh my god, just the cinematography, the effects itself, the moments, everything. Just like fucking gave me chills.
After that moment, I actually have this whole fan theory in my head now where their galaxy actually has a minimal atmosphere even in space, and that's why you can hear lasers and stuff in space, is that there is still vibrations happening.
Right.
And that moment was real, that all vibration stopped and that you couldn't hear anything for hundreds of miles around.
Yeah.
That it was just completely piercing silence all of a sudden. Like, that was such a beautiful moment. That's the thing, that this movie is full of
great,
beautiful moments. The fight choreography in this film
so
is unbelievable. It's top notch.
Yeah, that fight with Rey and Kylo and the Knights. Oh my, like, for two people, and that just shows like their connection in of itself, that two people who have never fought together, never trained together, suddenly have it looks like they've been working together for 50 years.
But yeah, no,
there's no hesitation.
The force between those two is just unbelievable.
And the fight choreography is phenomenal. And I think that's what it was like, as a movie, like as plots and certain things, kind of shaky, kind of weak, but those moments of just like I don't even think I got that moment when they did, so in Force Awakens, when they do like basically the Death Star demonstration again.
Oh, right.
It was very impressive, but it never I was so awestruck.
Yeah,
with this one.
It's never, as far as I can remember, I was racking my brain about it and asking other people, and no one could remember either. I don't think even in Legacy had anybody ever really discussed the concept of jumping to hyperspace through another ship.
Yeah. And just it's something we've never seen. As far as I've never seen it before.
I've never seen it. I don't remember hearing about it at any point, and it was beautiful.
Yeah,
it really
was.
It really did just take your breath away. I was speechless. I was literally speechless. Yeah. I sat there, just totally frozen, jaw like as far down as as it could fall, and. I just stood there gaping for a solid minute. It's just like, what the fuck did I just what?
And the fact that I think the fact that we also get to see the aftermath of it. Nothing like full on just explodes into like teeny tiny space dust. They're still on the ship. Rey, and Kylo, like, you watch Kylo as he's talking to Hux, and like you're watching the ships behind him like just drift away, and it's just this huge. It didn't get lost in any major explosions or flashes of light or anything like that. It was so poetic of like this final like someone had taken a sword and just sliced through everything, and you get to watch. Just in almost slow motion, this whole thing fall apart.
Yeah,
and it's so good, and it gives it. And I think the big thing was that we were allowed that moment. We were allowed to like be awestruck and just watch it for a couple seconds of like, holy shit, that actually happened. And like we kind of knew what was going on as soon as she started doing it.
Yeah, like no, it was very obvious. Like, oh, she's gonna ramp with hyperspace.
Oh.
Because we knew about the ramming. I don't know if any of us predicted the hyperspace.
No.
Like, she kind of mentioned it, and they gave us about 30 seconds to let that process before. Exactly. And it was just like, wait, so she's about to hit high through that. What is that going to?
Yeah, and it just happens. And the whole when we saw it, the whole theater was just silent.
Yeah.
Like,
no, absolutely.
It was insane.
Actually, I'm sorry. It was almost silent. There was one distinguished voice just going, wow.
Yeah.
Like, just one dude was just, like, like not even quite saying wow. Like, just wow.
Yeah. And there were a couple of moments where I talked, like, I was like, Luke, what are you doing? Like, there were a couple of those moments, like when he throws the lightsaber over his shoulder, or when the porgs are standing on the lightsaber hilt, and one is staring down the hilt.
It's just
and
like,
you're like, oh god, this is a PG-13 movie. Don't let it happen.
Like what?
It almost felt like a Robot Chicken scene.
It did. It
like,
did.
It almost kind of felt like a Robot Chicken scene where, like, you're like, oh, well, I know what's going to happen here now. This thing's gonna get shish kebabbed and fried.
Yeah. No, I mean, the whole thing did, just like right from him just like looking at this big dramatic moment.
Yeah.
Tosses over shoulder. What? No, I mean, here's what I will say. The director's goal was to make everybody who had a predisposed notion of what was going to happen go, no, I was wrong.
And that was for the entire movie.
And he did. His I feel like he should have had some other goals besides the one that he did. But I will say he had a very specific goal in mind, and that was to rethink about what Star Wars could look like and to make people who were completely complacent in what they thought Star Wars looked like and flip everything on its head.
Yeah.
And he did it. Mm-hmm. And so for that, he gets an A+. What his goal was achieved greatly. I think he forgot he was working on a Star Wars film and what the fucking fandom looks like.
Yeah.
But I don't think this film needs to be removed from the canon. And if you are, I mean, if it does, like, that's Carrie Fisher's last movie.
Yeah. Do you really want to?
And I'm not cool that being removed. No. It'd have to be a much bigger pile of shit.
Yeah.
Like, it would have to be bad enough where she was embarrassed by it, and she's done guest spots on The Big Bang Theory.
Right.
So.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So yeah, overall, like, I think I gave it like a set, like, looking at it without that 3-prong kind of way of looking at it, which you have to, because it applies certain things and excels in certain ways, and then it fails in other ways.
And some of the things that works in certain regards fails. Like we talked with that Carrie Fisher scene was good for 2 of those prongs and really bad for the other one. And that's why I use it as the overarching example for what I was talking about.
I think overall, like, if I had to combine everything,
like just a full flat score, an average,
I'd give it like a B. Like, I don't think it would be my best movie ever, and it's certainly not my favorite Star Wars movie ever. That one's gonna go, I think, to Rogue One. Especially for, like, newer movies, the new movies, I think Rogue One.
Rogue One is solid. I will say. I think Empire is always gonna hold a special place in my heart. Yeah, but Rogue One is fucking terrific.
So good. Where you still get that poetic... that's what it was. The moment with... That final moment with the battleship and it going through hyperspace and cutting through that fleet was very Rogue One feeling. It was very much that final scene in Rogue One.
There were a lot of scenes actually out of it. I think he liked Rogue One.
Yeah.
I think he really liked Rogue One because I could see a lot of Rogue One happening in the film.
I kept feeling like someone was gonna die, like Rogue One did, where everyone just started dying. Like, Finn almost dies. And I'm like, oh, Finn's gonna...
Yeah,
nope, never mind.
That was another complaint that I had. Either Finn or Rose should have died there. As far as for a singular movie and everything, like, yeah, somebody should have died there. That was a fucking horrible waste of tension.
And I think, like you said, it was almost like he wasn't sure... Someone had to keep reminding him that anything he did had consequences for later, both within the series itself and outside in terms of, like, contractual obligations.
Right.
Because I think it's a standalone movie. Finn would have died.
Yeah.
Finn would have absolutely died.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it, like you said, with
going out saying something like "I'm not trash" or "filth" or whatever Phasma said to him.
Right. But I think at the same time, he very much did that whole, I'm gonna flip everything on its head. That's why Poe's plan didn't work. Because in the original trilogy, Poe's plan would have worked. In any other movie, Poe's plan would have worked. And he would have come in a blaze of glory and been like, fuck yeah, bitches.
It was the classic Star Wars plan. Right. And it fucking failed horrifically, and I enjoy that, actually.
I liked it a lot. I kept wanting him to succeed. I kept wanting them to succeed. Because I love Poe. Poe Dameron, like,
and what an opening for him in this film too.
So
just
good.
Such a Poe opening. Just like, hi, I'd like to talk to the commander. You're talking to him. Yeah, I'd like to talk to the commander. Kind of a shorter guy, red hair.
I think his name's Hux. Yes, and like making an absolute fool of him. But
as his ship just slowly gets close, they just let him get closer and closer.
Instead of just shooting him out of the fucking sky.
I mean, in fairness, there was only one guy who could order that, and he was on the fucking comm link with him, being distracted by his own hubris.
Right. And so we get a little bit of classic Poe, which is phenomenal. We get to see him succeed, but then we get to watch him fall. And I loved, and people bitched about it. They're like, oh, well, why wouldn't she tell him of her plans and stuff like that? Because she didn't have to. She's his commanding officer. As far as I'm concerned, they still run like a military. And while, yes, Poe's so used to being in the inner circle because he's BFFs with Leia, she's doing him a favor by telling him what she wants to do. Holdo didn't have to do any of that shit.
Right. Now, I will say that she should have either more effectively locked him
absolutely.
down, or actually just told him, recognizing the situation, like, look, he's a war hero. He's going to convince too many people around him. I do actually have to let him know what's going on here. The fact of the matter is, though, we actually get to watch both deserved self-righteousness and hubris from the female commanding officer at the same time.
Right.
Because she knows that she should probably share it with him, but at the same time, he's such an asshole about it. And she shouldn't have to. She absolutely shouldn't have to. So she's not going to, because God damn it, she shouldn't have to do this shit. Even though if she thought about it logically for 2 seconds, she should have
absolutely
just
done it.
said something to him.
But we get to watch both of them get bitten in the ass about it.
Yep.
And that's what makes it so good. Because normally we would see that the commander would have gotten bitten in the ass, and then the rogue pilot wouldn't have had any consequences, and he would have succeeded and saved the day and blah, blah, blah. But we didn't. We got to watch both of them kind of fail. And it was because of both of their actions that they lost half of their rebellion. And Poe has to live with that, and I really hope that we get to see consequences of that later, because we didn't really see consequences of it. But to be fair, at that pace, it wouldn't have fit. He kept having to move. You had to keep moving forward. You had to keep fighting. You had to keep taking this junker of a ship and go cross these salt flats and throw yourself into the mouth of the beast. That's what you had to, that's what he had to do. He had to keep moving. He had no time to mourn like Leia did. So I hope in the next one, even if we do end up doing 8 years later, I hope we watch him hesitate. Because Poe never hesitates.
It would be cool to watch that kind of character development where he's suddenly unassured of himself and is kind of second-guessing what he does.
Like, still. Like, 8 years later. Like, I'm sure we'll see it. Like,
well, that would
if
be
it
a
was
cool
like
thing
6 months later.
If he's doing that at the beginning of the film and it's something he has to get over by the end of the film and kind of has to get back to his old gut instinct ways with still this new understanding of, like, occasionally you do have to listen to your commanding officer and back the fuck off.
Exactly. Then we get a little bit of, I don't know, character development.
Yep. Character development.
Be super.
Character development.
You know, that's
which
all of it.
I think Rey and Kylo had just shitloads of character development for those two. I'm really excited.
Finn, we got a little bit of.
We did. We didn't get a ton. We got a bit.
It was more like the pauper to like janitor to stormtrooper to rebellion hero.
Right.
Like, so we got a little bit of it, but not as effective. No, I think it was effective. I think it was quieter.
Yes.
It was not as pronounced. Quieter. It was not as pronounced.
They definitely, because he was looking to escape still, but I guess at the beginning of the movie, and by the end of it, he was willing to sacrifice himself.
We got the Han Solo kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
But with Rey and Kylo Ren, like, holy crap, in spades did we get that. And I liked Rey. I liked Rey in Force Awakens. There were certain moments where I was like, I could do without you. Whatever. She became very close. She became very much a favorite of mine in this one.
Yeah, no, she's fantastic in that, and again, the chemistry between those two.
Oh my god!
I want to ship them. I want to ship them so hard, it's ridiculous. And
I'm hoping that Abrams doesn't go back on. Okay, so there was a lot of controversy too. A lot of not controversy. There was a lot of bitching about who Rey's parents were, and the fact that they turned out to be nobodies. Which yet again. I love it.
Love it.
Because it's yet again, here's the thing, and everyone's like, oh, this is bullshit and blah, blah, blah. They hinted at it. They didn't hint at shit. Nobody hinted at shit. The only time that Obi-Wan is with, like, referenced at all is in his voice when Rey gets the visions in the first one. And everyone else fucking assumed she was either a Solo or a Skywalker. That was fans. So you can't tell me shit that they hinted at anything.
I mean, maybe Abrams had something in mind, but he likes to play mystery super close to the chest, so he didn't actually reveal anything to you.
No.
He made you want to know more things because he's obsessed with making... And actually, that's one of the things that worries me about this last film, is that Abrams is also kind of known for setting up mysteries that he doesn't solve super well, and now he has somebody else's mystery that he has to solve, and that is part of what's making me nervous about this next film. I think he'll hopefully do a good job, because I think that he'll have to actually kind of work within some restraints that might actually be good for him.
Right.
But at the same time, he
Let's hope he doesn't.
definitely have to decide how things are getting tied together, because he can't just leave things open-ended.
Right.
This isn't Lost.
Yeah, this isn't Lost. This is it. Like, and trust me, like, hell
and no,
hath
if you
no
fucked,
fury
if you
like
fuck,
a
if you
Star
fucked
Wars
it,
fan.
and that's the thing. Ultimately, like I said, like I think your assessment of like an overall B is probably fair in the overall scheme of things.
Yeah, I mean,
but the fact of the matter is, on like that 3-prong thing, like one of them was really good, one of them was terrible, one of them was all right, and kind of sat around where your B was overall and everything. Here's the thing. That all totally goes to shit if the next movie sucks.
Oh, yeah.
And that is
if
one
the
of
next
the
movie sucks, then this one.
big drawbacks on this movie as a self-dependent movie is that so much of it is going to depend like on this next film, and is this going to all just leave a very sour taste in my mouth?
Yeah.
And so Abrams has got some work cut out for him.
Absolutely.
He's going to have to tiptoe very, very carefully. And that's not going to be an easy thing to do. So I wish him the best of luck. 2 years, dude. Good luck.
Let's hope the Solo movie doesn't suck.
Can we talk about the afro part for a second?
Oh, what?
Did you see the fucking the poster?
No, I didn't see the poster.
Okay, hang on. Hey, give us just a second here, listeners, to hang on for a second, because if you guys have seen this, there is a solo poster that has been released with Donald Glover as, of course, Lando Calrissian, and he's got this hairstyle going on that,
what the fuck?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So it's an afro that's been parted, not even in like the middle, but kind of down like the side.
Yeah, it's like got a cut in it.
Yeah, and
apparently
I've never.
These aren't legit.
Huh?
I'm reading an article where it's not legit.
Oh, is this not a legit thing?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank goodness. Because if that's his hair, for real, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, there's something about it that makes me feel deeply uncomfortable.
70s?
But it's not even a style that I think I've like even like this, because like the afro, like with that style of hair, from what I can remember seeing, like maybe I've seen things like that, but I don't even think so. Like normally it would be like you kind of, if you were gonna do anything, you'd swoop it all sort of in one direction or the other. If you're gonna do anything like that, I've never seen one with a part. And if it did, it was kind of like then further combed out. Like this is like almost like as if somebody took an afro and then photoshopped like a little wedge out of it.
Which pretty much looks like what they did.
It's entirely possible.
Yeah, because we haven't seen any images. The only thing we've seen is them like sitting in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, which is, well, I mean, okay, so the whole thing is that the original director basically got fired because producers were looking at it, and I believe the quote that I heard floating around was that it was starting to turn into Ace Ventura in space.
No.
Yeah.
Don't do that to my Solo.
I know. I'm just like, oh. So now Ron Howard's on it, and if somebody could roll back, like this is the thing. They've filmed enough things where they're not gonna refilm everything. Like even if they refilm like 3/4 of what they've done, like they're sticking with a certain amount of it because at a certain point money talks.
Yeah.
And they've already paid for the film that has been shot, and so it's like, well, they're using at least some of it. So there is somebody who can take something that ridiculous and bring it back a little bit. It's something that's a little bit more palatable.
That's fine.
I think Ron Howard's probably a good choice.
Yes, because he's got a good balance of that humor, and because obviously there's gonna be certain moments where it's humorous. Because like Han Solo's kind of like, they're not slapstick, but he's got some humor, and Lando's got some humor.
Yeah.
So like as fucking 20-somethings, like they're gonna be smartasses. They're gonna be. I expect more dry humor. I expect more, well, like, yeah, if it's Ron Howard, like, I think that might be okay. I think he's got a good knowledge of, like, the balance between what's too much and the subtlety.
Yeah, I think so. I like to think so anyway.
I hope so. But I mean, again, he's got so much footage that he has to just sort of deal with. That's true.
And what I haven't actually gotten a chance to go out and see the Justice League yet. Unfortunately, I know I've been such a bad nerd. We'll talk about that in the new year. But one of the big things that I hear about that constantly is you keep just like getting these horrible directional tonal shifts.
Yeah.
Between
there's a lot of Suicide Squad.
Yeah, between the two,
shifts.
because it was half Joss Whedon and half Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
And that it was basically like Whedon versus Snyder. Like you could just tell who had directed what scenes, and it was very jarring.
Yeah, mostly because it was a little too Avengery
Yeah.
at certain points. You're like, oh nope, that's Avengers.
Yeah. So with that in mind, I'm just hoping that in the solo film, even if he does pull it back, I'm hoping there aren't like just like jarringly different scenes where the direction is just like very obviously different.
Because that'll kill a movie. Suicide Squad. Sorry. Not sorry.
I mean, it's kind of true.
So yeah, I'm hoping, because I'm really excited for the solo movie. I would love like an Obi-Wan movie. But these next couple movies have got to be, I don't want them to keep doing shit. Because like eventually you're just going to be like, oh my god, stop. But at the same time, I would like stuff to be quality.
Gonna reiterate it. Okay, so dude who just did this one, whose name we keep forgetting, which is probably bad on our part, but you know.
It's... Hold on, I got it.
But
Ryan
he has been
something.
handed an undisclosed trilogy.
Right.
Taking place somewhere else in the other universe.
Which could be cool.
Which could be very cool. I'm going to say this. I'm going to just throw it out there right now. If you try to do a Revan trilogy, you're going to fuck it up. That story can't be done in 3 films. It just can't. You need a series to do that correctly. And I don't even recommend doing it from Revan's perspective. Pick somebody else whose perspective that we haven't really focused on a lot in that universe, who's still... My opinion, by the way, is the pilot from those two. The 2 different pilots from those 2 games. Invent a 3rd character. Follow those 3 different characters and their 3 different ventures throughout the universe at that point in time, and do it that way if you're going to do the Revan time period and everything. I know I'm nobody. I know you don't care. But seriously, Revan in 3 movies is not going to work for you. Don't fucking do it. And don't hand it to this guy, because if he doesn't do meta things and just kind of wing stuff, Revan's not the place to do that.
So it's Ryan Johnson.
Okay.
And I think he would, from what we've talked about in terms of how this movie succeeded and failed, I think he'd do very well in just playing around in the universe with characters we've never met before.
I would totally be if it's completely like even in
completely
Legends
different.
we
Yeah.
haven't seen it before or something like that. I'm completely on board. I think you could do some really cool things with it. And ultimately then it's characters that are new, and I don't care if you Moffat them.
Right.
So
That's it.
I kept reading the big comparison that I kept making. No, when I read his directional style for this movie, that was my big
It's
thing. I was
very
like,
much Moffat.
oh god, it's Moffat. It's fucking Moffat all over
It's very
again.
true. So hopefully we'll get... So that'll be interesting. We won't see that series for quite a while, I don't think. At least not until at least probably 2021.
It's sometime around there that it's the first
Just
one it would be
'cause
slated for, I think.
Next year we've got Solo. Year after is 9, and then the year after that...
It's gonna be Kenobi, I think.
It's Kenobi, which I'm so excited for.
I'm so excited for
I'm so
Kenobi.
excited for-
Oh
and
my
Ian
god.
McGregor wants to come back. And I'm
I
like,
know.
just let him.
Let him
Just
do it.
let him.
I want to see that
Let him
shit.
do
I
it.
want to see that shit.
But so it won't be at least until 2021. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, like
Hopefully it'll be,
I'm excited that Star Wars, as long as this next movie goes well, Star Wars is going to continue to have a future, and I do enjoy that. So I guess if there's an ultimate sum up to be had, are fanboys being obnoxious and whiny? 100%.
Absolutely.
Are there problems with this film?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100% as well. It's not perfect. If you are trying to defend either one of the 2 big arguments out there to their fullest extent, I don't think you've got an argument.
No.
Ultimately, the fact of the matter is that this movie did some things really, really well. It was very short-sighted on some other things, and some things worked in certain lights and not in others. And so, at the end of the day, just was it entertaining for you? Were you entertained by it?
Were you entertained by it?
Ignore all the other stuff and just were you entertained by it? And if you were, as I was, then cool.
Super.
And we'll see how good or just kind of it winds up being based on this next film. Because think about it, guys. Think about how much was open-ended and left for this next film for us to decide. If this next film is really good, this could wind up being such a strong middle film for the trilogy. So, hold on and wait until this next one. If you want to poo-poo the entire trilogy once you've seen the entire trilogy, well, that's
just
fine.
Watch the originals,
but
fine.
wait for this trilogy to unfold, I would say, because it's very much built into itself, and I don't think we're going to know how it plays until we have this final installment
Exactly.
happen. So anyway, it is going to be the new year after when we see you again. Hopefully it'll be in January. We're not making promises at this point. But we'll get an episode out to you as soon as we can. We've been toying around the idea of maybe making shorter episodes about more focused topics and stuff, and maybe recording them at once and releasing them a little bit more often for you guys in that regard. So we'll see what we wind up ultimately doing for you guys, but in the meantime, I hope you had an awesome holiday season. I hope you have an awesome New Year's, and I hope that you have seen Star Wars The Last Jedi, because I think it's a lot of fun to have these discussions that have been going around on the internet.
Absolutely.
All right, you all take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
The music for the Geek for All show has been provided by Fat Street Beats, Ben Sound, and Purple Planet. Please support their individual pages.